And 16 years after her disappearance, the latest search for Madeleine McCann is well underway at a remote Portuguese reservoir in the Algarve. German, Portuguese and British police all on site and crucially hunting for the pink pyjamas Maddie was wearing on the night she vanished. Cops were last night pictured taking away a number of evidence bags to examine Portuguese newspaper Expresso today revealed these searches have their origin in a tip from an informant who the police force considers very credible and that the German police took very seriously. The reservoir sparked fresh interest after detectives obtained videos of chief suspect Christian Brockner visiting the beauty spot. The imprisoned German rapist, who lived just down the road at the time Maddie went missing, called the rural hideaway his little paradise. And a source close to the investigation tonight revealed that he visited the reservoir in the days after Maddie vanished. But the continued involvement of British police, funded by the UK taxpayer to the tune of over £13 million so far, has divided the nation. So let's have an honest debate about this tonight. Should we still be paying for Scotland Yard detectives to help in a fresh hunt for Maddie 16 years on? Dan at GBNews.com is my email. You can tweet in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. The results shortly, but to tackle this now, Director of the Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan, social commentator Bushra Shaikh. But first, to the former Crime Watch presenter, Sue Cook. So, Sue, over the course of your career, you've covered so many cases like this. However, I think you probably agree, very few disappearances have sparked the collective involvement of the British people than Madeleine McCann. However, Sue, there is a growing anger about the money that is still being poured into this case. Where do you stand on whether this search should be funded by British taxpayers?
Well, I think we have to go with it now, don't we? It's been so long now. We've had 16 years. And as you say, £13 million has been spent on it. I did a bit of research knowing that I was going to be on here later this evening. And when I realised it was £13 million, I must say I was shocked at the huge amount of money that it's cost. But since we've got so far down the line, and this particular investigation does sound very promising, the informant that the German police say that they've got investing a lot of confidence in, we've got to take it through. And Jerry and Kate have gone through so much agony, really, this last few years. People have accused them of being suspects. The Portuguese police were really unpleasant with them. They've, apart from just the grief of the uncertainty and losing their daughter for such a long, not knowing what's happened to their daughter for such a long time, it would be so good for not just for them, but for all of us. We were all very invested in trying to find Maddie. People keep coming up, don't they, saying they claim they've found Maddie somewhere. And once again, the parents go through hell again, thinking, could this be it? Could she still be alive? We've got now, I think, to carry on and see if we can get closure with this particular investigation, which does sound promising.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Sue. Bushra Shaikh, you feel very differently about this, and I want to be honest about it because your feeling is a feeling that many people contact me with, and you think that because the McCanns made a mistake in terms of leaving Maddie that night on the Algarve, that the search should not be funded by the British public.
Absolutely, Dan. And I've always maintained the fact that I sympathise with the McCanns ultimately, but I just want to address the elephant in the room. This boils down to irresponsible, bad parenting. Unfortunately, that is the case. And with the McCann, they have to live with that for the rest of their lives if they do not ever find Maddie. I do not believe that it is the responsibility of the UK public to be endorsing and paying for this anymore. 16 years down the line, unfortunately, when it comes to becoming a parent, you have to be the individuals that minimise the risk for your children. To go and dine when you have the opportunity of having a babysitter for your children, to me, is absolutely unforgivable. And so lots of people do feel this. So 16 years on, £13 million by the taxpayer. I believe that is enough. And, we do have to address this. I believe people have also learned from the McCanns that you have to put your children first. And they have to live with this now.
So, Norman Brennan, you've heard two very different sides of the argument there, and it certainly is how a lot of Brits feel. Where do you come down on, Norman?
Well, I've met about 1,000 families bereaved by homicide and represented several hundred personally. Denise Bolger, Sarah Payne, Damilola Taylor, many others. I would never criticise a family. I've represented families where they perhaps, or one has been acted irresponsibly. When you've lost a child or had a child murdered, that must be put to one side. What I will say is that, in my opinion, the amount of money is absolutely unprecedented for to find a missing person. Now, I don't mean to be funny or awkward on this, but I've heard the headlines so many times in the news over the past 16 years that I now rarely pay much attention to it. The only time I will pay attention is if Madeleine is found alive, God willing, or sadly, she is found, because it will put to rest. But the thing is, I deal with families that are begging for counselling. I represented Leslie Ann Downey's family. She was murdered by Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. Keith Bennett was never ever found. Since then, there's been the sporadic search for him. But this is unprecedented, £13 million. And I think the public are losing sympathy because of the cost. And 16 years on, there is a lot more that can be done for families bereaved by homicide, having children murdered. And many of them feel that they're being ignored. And when they see so much money being spent, they say, hang on, what about us? And there are other missing children as well.
And Sue Cook, that is one of the main points that I hear, because why does this case deserve all of this attention when there are so many other families suffering?
Well, I think every child's life is beyond price, isn't it? I think no amount of money is too great for any child. There are a lot of children, yes, you're quite right. There are a lot of children who've gone missing, and we should spend money finding all of them. And, you know, it's a very difficult decision. But as I say, since we've got this far down the line with this investigation, I don't know why it's cost so much money, but since we've got this far down the line, but all children are worth it. No child is beyond price. We must spend as much as we can. And also justice should be done too. This perpetrator needs to be brought to justice.
OK. Bushra, a final word to you.
Brought to justice.
Yeah, do you know what? I think it's important to also address that, you know, the public are angry at the McCanns, and there are people that have been angry with them for years, simply because we know how important it is to be the right parent and the right type of parent. And of course, I can sit here and give them condolences for the situation. For 16 years and £13 million, I think it's way too much.